Hi everyone, I'm the Director for Common Knowledge Trust, and our New Zealand NGO houses all of the skills in birthing better that mothers and fathers developed with me in the early 1970s. And you can see the website links on the above this recording. Our NGO has decided that we're going to do some live, 7 series live, skills-based childbirth series, both on Facebook and on YouTube within the next week. We are now reading stories because of this virus that women are not going to have perhaps their husband or other or their doula with them at birth. And we want to make certain that everyone's skilled. I have a 50-year perspective of this because in 1970, when I gave birth, all of us were skilled in the United States. The first childbirth classes ever taught in the United States were all skills-based. They were Lamaze and Bradley. Yes, those skills were sort of primitive and they didn't work for a lot of us. They didn't adapt. They weren't adjustable. They weren't sustainable. They were focused on trying to achieve a natural birth, pain-free labor with no medical care, which was totally leaving out the majority of women who birthed. And by the time I gave birth again in the 1980s, all those skills were gone. It was all about choices, and it was all about classes that were information-based so that we could make choices and create birth plans. And it was during that period of time in the 1990s that doulas then took the place of fathers as birth coaches who had been demoted to birth support people. And doulas began to really be the coaches in the United States. And when we developed the skills in the early 1970s, we were absolutely committed as mothers and fathers to develop skills that were adaptable, adjustable, and sustainable and worked in every type of birth. Because one of the realities is that 100% of pregnant women will give birth one way or another, and we, women, are the only ones doing it. It doesn't matter where we birth, it doesn't matter who is present, it doesn't matter our circumstances. We cannot stop for lunch. We can't do it the next day. We have to do it. And humans are hardwired to want to become skilled to do activities, particularly challenging activities, and birth is challenging. Whether you're driving to the hospital, being prepped and lying on a table, having a cesarean and recovering from that, or whether you're laboring and having a vaginal birth, with or without, lots of medical care attached to that birth. And so our New Zealand NGO is absolutely committed to passing on these skills. We'll be doing a 7-part series, and that series will go over all of the skills. They won't go over them as in depth as our online courses are, but we are going to touch on all of them. When mothers and fathers developed these skills in the early 1970s, there was a 4.5% cesarean rate in the United States. That meant 95% of us labored. It didn't mean we all coped well, and it didn't mean we all had good outcomes. It just meant that the medical profession didn't really always have the assessment tools, and it didn't always have the techniques to help reduce the potential risks. But we did labor, and skills helped us to cope and to manage, to work through, to deal with, to handle, to stay on top of, and to feel in control. And that made a difference. So the Birthing Better families first developed, for the first 10 years, skills to cope and manage. And when cesareans became safer, because women started wearing bikinis and we demanded not to be left with a horrific scar, and the medical profession developed the bikini cut, and that made it safer. And so the cesarean rate began to rise because those risks of those 95% of us who labored, the medical profession and consumers decided they wanted to reduce the risks. And so the cesarean rate has risen. Good, bad, who knows? It has. But every woman is doing the activity of birthing her baby. So we're going to go over the breathing skills, which are not like hypnobirthing, they're not like Lamaze, they're not like Bradley method. They start with the 4 ways that humans breathe. We're going to go over the communication skills, the verbal and nonverbal communication skills. What are we doing in our minds when we hate the experience of giving birth? We have to have skills that we can work with and know we're working with, even though we have really negative feelings about what's happening to us or around us. We're going to go over the deep touch relaxation skills, the skills that help us soften inside. We'll go over the how to map your pelvis to know the space your baby has to come through. We'll go over the bony pelvis skills, how to create space in your pelvis to give your baby room. We're going to go over the soft tissue of your pelvis skills so that you know how to soften inside, which helps you dilate the cervix and helps the bony pelvis, which is a hard structure, have mobility. We're going to go over the teamwork skills. We're going to go over the negative and positive voice. What happens if you feel negative and have to cope with this? We're going to go over the skills of how to stay in the now, which means how not to future trip into the future of your birth, and the 5 phases of contractions, so that you can use skills in all of the 5 phases of contractions. We'll go over the skills about pain, how to deal with pain and cope with pain in labor, because even though it's unique and it's progressive, we have a baby at the end of it, it can hurt, and women feel like they're going to die. Some of us have no pain. Wow, some of us have copable pain. But we know that all of us who have skills deal better with any discomforts that we experience or the things that happen to us. So in that 7 series, it's going to be a scheduled series. So we'll do one on Facebook and we'll do one on YouTube. And I'm just going to go over those skills so that you have them. We're at a very unique time with this virus. You are going to birth alone. But let me tell you something. Every woman births alone. Nobody can take over the job. We have to do it. We've always had to do it. Whether nobody is with us or 100 people are with us. And the reality is, in the 70s, when we all went to Lamaze and Bradley classes, we practiced our skills. And we used our skills, as imperfect as those skills were. We used them because it became very clear to us that it was better for us to use some skills to cope and manage and to feel in control than to not use any skills, not have any skills, and just felt that birth was happening to us and it just left us often feeling totally out of control. We are the only ones doing birth, and we must be able to reclaim our ability to birth with skills. It has been absolutely nonsense. Really, I've been doing this for 50 years. And when the natural birth movement and the famous authors of the late 70s and 80s started to say, birth is the most natural thing in the world, women know how to birth, birth is guaranteed 100% of the time for all of us as pregnant women. We are going to do it. It doesn't mean we know how, any more than we know how to be a good lover just because we're horny, or we know what foods are safe for us or our children to eat just because we're hungry. Birth is an activity like any other activity, except it's infrequent and it's a one-off and we can't replay it. And we were beginning to grow a skilled birthing population in the United States in the 70s and in other countries, but they were always tied to trying to achieve this natural birth rather than the reality that 100% of us are going to give birth. And then the natural birth movement and the famous authors said, cows and cats aren't taught to birth, women don't need to be taught to birth. Yes, we need skills to birth. And they took skills away, and childbirth preparation became full of information. Focus was on choices. Focus was on birth plans, that we knew the kind of birth we wanted, and they were supposed to give it to us. And we have become unskilled, which means that the medical profession, instead of seeing multiple millions of women from the 60s and the 70s and multiple millions of fathers in the 60s and the 70s use some level of skills, they now don't see that at all. And so women are terrified of going into birth now where they don't have the doula, they don't have their partner. And we can't have this. We absolutely, when this is over, must couple skills to choices and focus more on the skills. We have to do the activity of birthing our baby, regardless of whether our choices unfold or not. It is not about what we want. It is about doing the activity. So this 7-part series that will be scheduled soon, it will be live on Facebook, and there'll be a slightly different series on YouTube because I develop these skills with hundreds of families. So I get to choose what I want to talk about and pass on the skills that I want to talk about. It's really important that you become skilled. Now, do we just advocate birthing better? Of course not. There's hypnobirthing, Lamaze, Bradley, calm birth, birthing within, and there are other skills-based methods. But don't mistake information with skills. Skills are what you do, and humans thrive on being skilled. And it's important for us to have some level of skill as we work through this amazing journey and this activity of birthing our baby. So we will announce when we're going to do these. Our trust and I are in New Zealand, and one of the things I'm trying to figure out is how to schedule them for Central U.S. time. And then where does that leave people in Europe, or where does that leave people in New Zealand? So I'm just trying to work out the logistics, and we're going to do this soon. Now, if you decide that you want to purchase Birthing Better Skills, we have an automatic 20% off all of them. All of these skills were developed equally by fathers and mothers. And fathers, even though they may not be able to be with you at the birth, can help you learn them during your pregnancy and help you prepare your body. This makes a difference because if you're birthing on your own and you know that your partner is skilled, they are either close by or at home using the skills and encouraging you. And that makes a difference. So stay tuned, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.